All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and our good buddy Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. How we feeling on a Tuesday afternoon? Good to see you, Jonas.
Good to see you, boys.
Jonas, what have you got for us today? Are you going to chisel away at us and make us angry and give us some hot takes?
Probably.
Or what do you have in store for me and Hazy B today? Anything special or no?
Anything spicy? I mean, I think we see eye to eye on everything, don't we?
Yeah? Okay, that would be...
We're all aligned.
What are the odds on that? We should get FanDuel to place odds on the idea of us getting through 3 hours without anything being
I think there's going
provoked.
to be something pop up that we're not aligned on.
Yeah, either a here's the thing, Jonas, or a provocative comment, or a jab, or disagreement on analytics, which is a big part of what we're talking about, right? The Bucks went for 2 over the weekend, and heads are popping off all over North America because what the numbers suggest you should do in a scenario like that, and you win in regulation instead of going to overtime.
Well, I will say one thing, Hazy. I think Mike Wilbon yesterday teed off on just analytics and coaches that just go and say the analytics did this. But Mike Kelly had a nice comment today. And I personally don't care what teams do. But he said analytics is just to provide assistance to say you might have a better chance if you approach it this way. Ultimately, it's your stupid ass's decision to make the call whether you do it or not. So it's just there. It's like a light pole. You could hold your hand. You could put yourself up against it, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
That's it.
Look at this. We got a kumbaya right out of the gate.
You know what it is? And, Jeff, you're exactly right. It requires context. Like, you can't just, take it in a vacuum if Baker Mayfield's your quarterback.
Dude, no kidding. The coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't come out after and said, the guy came down from the press box and said, from the analytics team, and said, you have to do this. You don't have to do anything. It's just, it's right there showing here's what could happen if you continue
Even
to do
in
it
hockey, we measure, we talk about, you guys love expected goals. I know it's your big
wrong. Because in hockey, people are signing guys because they're analytics darlings.
Well, exactly.
Sergei Gurgentsev, whoever that was, and Yevgeny Malgin is another one where it's like, no way. No way.
I think it's
they
Gino
might be
Malgin.
Gino Malgin and those little characters that were running around with the Leafs the last couple years, no business playing in that league, but they were analytics darlings. So that's where I disagree. It took 5 minutes, Jonas. It took 5 minutes.
I don't even think it was 5 minutes. But the point is, an expected goal from Austin Matthews is different from an expected goal from Gino Malgin, but it's measured the same. It's where he's shooting the puck. But
do you not agree that do you not agree that an analytics darling signing is absolute lunacy? Lunacy.
Unless you understand the context in which you're using the statistics, right? If I look at the analytics of a third pairing defenseman, they might be amazing. But he's on the third pair. He's playing against third and fourth lines. He's starting in the offensive zone most of the time. It's different from a guy who goes against top lines.
What about this, Jonas?
Yeah, I love this.
Might be an analytics darling, but every time he goes in the corner, he gets crushed battled for the puck, and then the guy takes it to the net, and he chews on minuses relentlessly. How does that equate to having someone in your roster that's needed? It's insanity.
Well, some of that's supposed to show up in the numbers. But a good example of that is Liljegren. Hayes and I were talking about him before. There's a reason he hasn't played a lot in the playoffs the last couple of years because of what you're talking about. But the analytics, outstanding.
Off the charts. Yeah, off the charts. Because
what do you mean they're off the hang on a sec. What's off the charts?
They're very good.
Timothy Liljegren's
but it's context.
Underlying statistics.
Need context. He's not playing against top lines.
You know what? There's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about. He might be an analytics darling, but how many times do you just see him get slapped around in the corner and it's like he just can't handle the physicality? I don't care what his analytics say. I don't know.
Context.
Anyway, that's not the way I wanted to start the show.
I thought we weren't doing this. Yeah, I was under the impression that...
what can we agree upon? Let's start there.
How about this when it comes to the Bucks and analytics and going for 2?
Which Bucks? Oh, the
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How about Todd Bowles using his third timeout What are the analytics on not using your timeout?
How about the explanation?
Well, it was absurd. It's fitting for him. I've never seen a coach in pro sports show a lack of emotion or a lack of pulse like Todd Bowles. I've never seen anything like it. If you watch him, and listen, he's a winning coach. He was a big part of their Super Bowl runs too, right? I think he was the defensive coordinator for Bruce Arians.
Dude,
Arians
he looks like he needs a
stepped in.
defib on the sidelines.
It is shocking to me. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not a Lions fan. I'm not a Bucks fan. I'm standing up. I'm pacing. I'm going back and forth. Todd Bowles looks like he's waiting for an Uber. Like he looks like he's on his way to the airport and he's leaving 4 hours before his flight. So there's no anxiety. There's no concern. There's no nerves. He shows zero emotion. I've never seen a coach like that.
He's got ice in his veins.
Well, I guess, listen, I'm sure his explanation would be, I'm composed. I want to show that I'm ready to go and I'm not panicking or whatever. But, like, the Lions butchered the winning formation, like taking a knee and killing the clock. They butchered it. They snapped it too early. Goff took a knee too early. And he chewed on a timeout that was not used that would have forced like a 47-yard field goal to close the game.
He's like, hey, the game's over.
I know. And his explanation after was, well, it was over anyway, so it's all good. And, I love Dan Campbell, and it's, a gentleman's agreement. It's wild. Like, it's really, really wild stuff. So, anyway, we got a big show today. Kevin Cheveldayoff will join us, the GM of the Jets, because Winnipeg is in town tomorrow, and then the Leafs go off to Winnipeg on Saturday night. And we have news from practice today. Ilya Samsonov will start tomorrow night. And we talked about this yesterday where I made the case that if he didn't start tomorrow, that's all I needed to know. They're done with him. Like, if he did not start the game tomorrow, that is them telling the world, we're not letting him back in. He's here out of necessity until Wall returns. But I think it's the right play because he did look good on Sunday. He looked pretty good the week before against Detroit.
He looked fine.
On Sunday or against Detroit?
Game he
was okay. He wasn't great, but he was okay. And I thought he played well against Seattle. Like, he deserves his flowers. Didn't get tested a lot?
He's 17 shots, but yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, he was awful. I don't know what to tell you. I thought he played pretty well, and he got a win. Like, I'm generally pretty critical.
Right.
I didn't think that him only giving up one goal and getting a win was worthy of, dousing it with
He's good enough. He's played good enough to give
the
other guy a break. But what I will say,
that's what it is. Give him a break. Jones has got to get a night off. He has to.
Jones gets a break, but I will say, I'm as curious about tomorrow's start as I was about the Detroit one, as I was about the Seattle one, because it's now, are you back or what are you? Now's the start where it's like, what are you all about? Have you kind of climbed halfway back? Are you 3/4 back? Or is it blow-up zone where it just could go nuts again? Who knows? So I'm glad he showed some confidence in getting the job done in Seattle. He did have the quality start against Detroit, or however Jonas wants to describe it.
It sucked. It was awful.
I thought it was a quality start. I thought they pissed away an opportunity to win the game and give him some more confidence. Mm-hmm. But tomorrow's the one I'm most curious to watch. It's like, what do you got cooking in there mentally against a real quality team?
That's the thing. A, it's a really good team. B, I want to see what happens when there's actually some adversity. Like, what happens when you give up a bad goal? Is that it?
Or
like,
two.
Do you give up 6?
Like, if you're down 2 Cobb, can you battle back and say, let's do this?
Yeah, and that's what we haven't seen yet.
Well, and again, I always go back to the Alec Manoah situation, which, apples to oranges because they're different people, different sports.
Good comparison, though.
But we can recall, like, when he was sent down in June. We were at the Canadian Open. Remember, we were at Oakdale. We were sitting there on the 14th.
We never saw the guy again.
And then, he came up right before the All-Star break. Remember, he was gone for a month. He came up against Detroit. I'm looking at his game logs right now. That was July 7th, right before the All-Star break. He went 7 innings, gave up 5 hits, 1 earned run. Everyone was like, hey, that's great stuff. And then San Diego came to town. Like 11 days later, your boy Juan Soto actually was mashing.
New York Yankee.
Greatest hitter those eyes have ever seen. And he got blown up. 3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 4 earned, gave up a home run, walked 5 guys, and then
there was one more after that, and then it was game over.
It was like, see you later. Exactly. He kind of righted the ship for a couple starts, and then it was like, that's enough. We can't keep doing this. So I think that's an appropriate analogy for exactly what you're saying here. Is I'm pulling for Samsonov. I think everyone is. It would be a really cool story. And if you're a Leaf fan, you need him. You need him because I'm assuming Hellebuyck starts tomorrow night, and I'm assuming Hellebuyck starts on Saturday, and I can guarantee you he's going to come to play. And last night, for the first time since November 2nd, the Jets gave up 4 goals in a game, and the 4th goal was an empty netter. So really, it was almost like actually 5-on-5. They gave up 3, and they're going to defend. They're going to respond. They'll defend and respond likely on Saturday night. So the Leafs better show up, and the Leafs better be ready to defend. They better be ready to pay attention to detail. And at some point, Ilya Samsonov tomorrow night, possibly Saturday, maybe it's Martin Jones, you're going to have to match or close to match what the freak on the other side of the ice is going to do.
What Winnipeg does really well is they're moving out there. And it's not just through the neutral zone and fancy plays. They move to hit. They move to get on the forecheck. Everything's up-tempo. They got different styles of players like Adam Lowry, and then they can throw Ehlers at you and Scheifele and like it's a really nice mix of forwards that offer something different and bring something different to the table. And all of it together is one of the top records in the league. So you want to talk about depth or lack of it, whoever decides they don't want to play tomorrow could be the ones that expose the Leafs lineup. So you better be ready because it'll get ugly if you're not.
Yeah, I mean, you were down there at the skate today. They're going to say the right things, and we'll see. Like Tyler Bertuzzi may not play. His wife is expecting the child today or tomorrow. I guess they're not certain if he'll be available to them. I guess is Ryan Reaves off IR now, or is he still on
off
IR? So he's not going to play tomorrow night.
Doesn't look like it.
Do you think
Where's
we'll
that
see him?
going to go, Jonas?
I think it's interesting. Like I think there are 4 paths they can take with him. I was thinking about this today. They can continue to sit him, but they're going to have to make a roster move at some point, potentially, right, when Bertuzzi is on the roster again. They could trade him. They could waive him. Or they could play him. And I don't see them playing him. Like, I think that ship has sailed, hasn't it? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
think so.
see how he fits in this lineup. I think we've kind of seen it doesn't work. So to me, it's, can you trade him? I don't think so. So I kind of think you end up waiving him, don't you?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
they
guess.
could just keep him on the roster. They could send William Lagesson down.
Right.
And he can be your 13th, 14th forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not ideal, though. I mean, that's
not happy.
Like, yeah, well, he's not going to be happy. And at some point, you're going to need someone to play. Like, you're a game away from multiple injuries in the same game.
Yep.
Where someone's going to have to go in there and fill a roster spot. And I also don't think you want him disgruntled with the Marlies. I mean, I have to believe it was understood between both parties, the Reaves party and the Leafs party, that at some point over the 3 years, you're playing for the Marlies.
I'm sure the Leafs thought of that. Do you think he thought of that? I doubt that.
No player would ever think with his mojo and his kind of...
Oh, man, I'm sorry that's just a complete lack of self-awareness. Like the idea that you're 36, 37, and you're a fourth-line guy, that you're going to be playing for 3 years.
That's on the front office.
I
That's
agree
on
with
him.
you. I'm not letting them off the hook. It was, in retrospect, obviously it was a terrible mistake. It doesn't help that Sam Lafferty is going to score like 20 goals for the Vancouver Canucks. It's an awful mistake, and they're paying for it. Mm-hmm. But I would have to believe the Leafs at least were thinking at some point, like, there's no way Ryan Reaves was spending 3 years with the big club.
Yeah.
Like, which again also makes it absurd that you would give him a 3-year deal with the expectation that he's not going to fulfill it all.
That's the crazy kind of thing about it. It's like, I'm not coming there unless I get 3 years. How it was, okay, we'll give you 3 instead of no thanks.
I know.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, the way that their history with negotiating, I guess it's not all that surprising. I mean, generally the players get what they want.
But this is like, the thing is that's so bizarre is this is exactly what happened last year to him, where he signed, I think he signed a 1-year contract 2 summers ago with New York, played 12 games. The 12 games went really bad. New York was like, we can't play him anymore. They traded him in Minnesota. It goes a bit better for him in Minnesota, but it's like, this literally just happened, and he's a year older, and the league's faster, and he's slower, and it's like, it didn't make sense to me at the time, and it's now, you're right, they're paying for it.
Yeah, and listen, he wants to get in. He wants to prove himself. He's a proud guy, as he should be. He said he's been in the league for a long time. He knows who he is, what he thinks he can bring.
And there is a chance, Hayes, that he could get back in there and he could be effective somehow. But I just think if you want to be honest with assessing the situation, it looks unlikely that would happen. Like, it looks really unlikely that would happen. That he could have a complete 180, and I hope he does it. I like somebody that can rebound and show something and do something. But the likelihood of him getting back in and looking like he can contribute and not be a liability and chewing on minuses for him and his line mates, it looks like an unlikely thing to happen right now.
Well,
and that's just the honest truth.
Oh, we keep seeing this again and again. Age is like, what's the saying? Father time is undefeated. Like, you get old quick. Like, kind of seeing that a little bit. Mark Giordano, it doesn't look like he's going to play tomorrow night. He didn't play Sunday night.
Guys are boogieing out there, man. It's a fast game.
Yeah. Well, that's what has happened this year is that, the Leafs were going in, banking. Obviously, every team you're playing with fire when you have older players.
You're right.
Like, that's going to happen. But when you look at it, Giordano, I think that injury hurt him too. I think it's been more difficult for him to get back.
Same thing happened to Jason Spezza. You're right.
Yeah, got injured, left the team for like a month, lost his hands a little bit, lost his footing a little bit.
Yeah.
Brody looks older. Tavares looks older. Reaves, I guess looks older, is older, hasn't fit. John Klingberg, over 30, gave him a deal. Obviously, couldn't stay healthy. Older.
You're right.
Like they needed a couple of those guys to play above the age expectation or look as if they didn't run into a wall.
When someone's making an assessment, they'll say, if you get 3 or 4 guys that are consistently in your lineup that are not moving at the right pace, they'll say that team's starting to play slower because it's guys out there that aren't moving their feet properly. They aren't moving the puck, and it slows down everybody else. And all of a sudden you got an assessment of your whole team saying they're slower. They're playing slower than they have in the – I've heard people say that already. They play slower than they have in the past. So
yeah, you're right. The links of a chain. I mean that's what makes the whole team
work. What a
work.
comment, Monty. The links of a chain.
That was Monty on the desk.
Give him the Monty drop, JP.
At Royal
Come
Troon.
on.
Like that was just absolutely ready to rock at the Open Championship. But it's true because everyone's got to slow down if the one guy can't get around the net quick enough.
And that's what was happening with Reaves early in the year, where that fourth line would go out there and they would just spend the entire shift in their own zone chasing. And so what does that mean for the next line? Well, now they're having to chase,
down
and
there
it's just like it's...
Yeah. The links of a chain. Monty. Grin screwing my way through.
You should
just
be writing for The Athletic.
Wow. The links of a chain.
Yeah.
JP, do you have the Monty for this cat or
we
what?
have Monty, Colin Montgomery. I'm not sure JP knows what we're talking
No,
about. The picture?
No, the great call, Monty. That's why you're the best in the business.
Oh, you're talking about
the
Major League. Yeah. Monty and what's his name? What's the guy? Harry Doyle.
Harry Doyle.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we missed that.
Links of a chain, man.
I think we missed the boat on that one. There's some wild stuff going in the NBA. It was
Dude,
like
how
Adrian
about the
Griffin,
Bucks coach?
Adrian Griffin, who was on the Raptors staff for years and was a part of their championship run. The Bucks are 30-13. He got fired today. And they're saying Doc Rivers, like Shams is reporting that Doc Rivers could be in the running. Doc is the guy in the booth for ESPN. Like they got rid of Jeff Van Gundy so that Doc could be in the booth. And now Doc might take over there. I think there's going to be an interim, while it's currently ongoing. But that's really difficult to reason with unless something was going on behind the scenes or he and Giannis were just like nose to nose hating each other.
That's where it's almost like in sports things aren't fair, where it's like you get gassed, you get traded, you get bought out, but you're 30-13 and you're firing me. That almost seems like grievance worthy, where it's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Like, is it possible to fire me at 30-13? Unless the leadership group, Hayes, had a meeting with the general manager and the owner and said, we're 30-13, but we'll never win with this guy at the helm.
That's we're speculating, but that seems like the only likely explanation.
It has been bubbling all season. Like there was a report.
For what reason, Jonas?
Just like different things. Like there are games where like he takes Giannis out of the game and Giannis kind of looks at him like, why am I coming out of the game? Like that kind of stuff. And there was one game where Adrian Griffin comes out of the game and he says, they're asking him, I think, about the system defensively. And he says, well, a couple guys came to me after the game and they said, we need to change this. So I changed it. So like they haven't been happy with the system. Like Giannis and him have kind of butted heads, it seems like.
Well, if he's going to piss off Giannis, if that was one of his first things to do, then he's just stupid.
Yeah, that's silly, obviously.
Yeah,
but
like,
still,
they're trying to win a title, though.
I know.
Like it's one thing to say to him, look, there's going to be some certain things during the regular season, but come playoff time, we just can't do that if we're going to go all the way and win. But to just piss off a guy like that's just stupidity to go in there. And I don't know. We got to get the details.
That's the thing. I mean, we're speculating on what happened.
I'm going to find the video so you can see.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm sure there's references, but still, 30-13, and they just hired him. Like, to use an example here, Darko Rajakovic has been here. How many games has he coached? Same amount. It hasn't been great. I know different expectations, but he's had some moments where you're like, Darko, what are you doing with that rotation? They don't fire him and say it's just completely unacceptable. Scotty Barnes doesn't accept coming out of the game.
I've always said, guys, the situation in Milwaukee and Toronto, the coach and the players, it's like links on a chain.
Yes, it is. Play the Monty. You got to have.
He's not the best cornerman in the league for nothing, folks.
There it is. All right. We're on top of it. We got the Monty. We got the links on a chain. And
it's just such a contrast. Like you guys talked, I think, the other day about Mike McCarthy in Dallas, and they're like, no, we're going to keep this going. We believe in this guy. And
well, listen, I do appreciate that without knowing exactly what happened here. If it was simply, we made the wrong hire, this isn't going to work, and we're rectifying it, I think that's incredibly...
I almost have an appreciation for that. If those guys are killers and Giannis has a killer mentality and he's like, great guy, but we're not going to, he doesn't have the stones or he doesn't have this or that or the jam to get us over the finish line. So good. I like the idea of fixing it now. I like the idea of fixing it now. But if it was for some other ridiculous reason, I think it's nonsense.
What's ironic is like they went for years where there was so much controversy over their coach, Budenholzer. And they're like, no, we're going to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, Bud won them a title, though.
Yeah, but before that, it was like every playoffs. It was like, oh, my God,
this
what
guy
is Bud doing? He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
They stick with it. They win a title, and then they fire him.
Yeah. Well, and like, look at Kyle Lowry. You called it yesterday. Or he got traded to Charlotte.
I'm Woj.
Yeah, you are Woj.
Wojog.
Woj dog. And, Terry Rozier going the other way. And that's a good pickup from Miami. And they're going to buy out Kyle. But that's Miami saying, thanks for everything, man. Like, see you later. We have to use your money. We're not even using you as a player. We need to match some money. We're going to attach a pick to it. You're leaving. He'll get bought out. He'll go somewhere. I don't know where he's going to end up. But
could he? This is a ridiculous question, but could he sign back with Miami?
No, he can't go back to the team that traded him. You can't get traded, bought out, and go back there. But he can sign.
Then they'd be doing it all the time.
Yeah, you'd work out deals. Yeah, I mean, some people are wondering, does he go back home to Philly? Is the Lakers come calling? Who knows? I mean, he's if he wants to keep playing, someone will sign him. But yeah, it was wild last night. Embiid at 70. Karl Anthony Towns at 62 in a loss. They lost. Like he had 62, and their head coach was freaking after the game. Yeah, it is.
Without your boy Wemby. He got slapped around last night.
Well, and he still put up, what do you have, 30 last night, 31? And that's the thing with the Raps. Like, you talk about getting smacked around. They have no front court. Like, the Raptors have no front court. And, if Pirtle's injured, now Siakam's gone. They got Scotty playing the 4 last night. You're playing Porter. You're playing, who do you think you're getting something out of? Like, teams are coming into Toronto, and they're looking at them saying, we are going to attack you. They have no size. They have no ability to push back. And as a result, you lose in the fashion you did. That Memphis team is terrible. Like, they are awful, and they dummied the Raptors last night. And the Raps have lost, 7 of 8 now? And OG Anunoby's not here anymore.
Do you think this is all going to plan,
Memphis team is giving up on the year.
They are. They're tanking, too. Jaw's done for the year. They got big injuries. I mean, this Raptors team, that's what we're saying. Brace for it. They are awful, and they are gonna be really, really struggling for wins.
Isn't that the point?
It is, but I'm saying
tough to watch.
It's tough to watch, but B, Raptor fans, we've been very lucky here for a decade. And I think there was some belief that the Rudy Gay trade, somehow it miraculously improved their chances.
It did.
Immediately.
And so did the failed Kyle Lowry trade.
Well, yeah, they were going to trade him to the Knicks, and then the Knicks, obviously, because James Dolan's a moron, he decided to nix that, and the rest was history. But they were tanking. They were trading Rudy, they were trading Kyle, they were going to go the other way, and then it all worked out, and then it was Lowry and DeMar and Dwayne Casey, and they won a bunch of ball games. And I think there was certainly a hope here that the same thing would happen this time, trade Anunoby, and you're going to get better with Barrett and with Quickly. No, you're not. Not right away. You might in the future. And, you move Siakam, you bring in, basically picks and a player you're probably going to flip between now and February 8th.
Yeah.
They're going to be in a tough spot here, probably for the next couple of years. And what you got to hope for, if you're a Raptor fan, is make sure it's not Detroit. It's not Charlotte. It's not what Washington's doing right now.
Well, you can't. So you can't blow picks.
Well,
they
yeah, exactly.
Lose so many picks and trades and signings.
All those teams.
All those things.
Discussing, yes.
Yeah.
But that's why, again, if if you're going to bottom out here, you got to end up with your pick this year. The problem is, I believe it rolls over to next year.
Yeah, it's top 6 this
It's
year.
like top 6, top 6, top 6, and then becomes like 2 seconds or something like that.
Well,
But you could be awful next year, too.
and I think next year's draft is supposed to be better than this year's draft.
Right.
So in theory, you'd actually want it to go this year. But
Yeah, again, unless you're going to be one of the worst teams in the league next year, which I think you have. I guess that's what I'm saying.
that's what I mean.
You
Like,
got to
so
brace for it.
I'd rather give it up this year because we're going to be bad next year. That's what I'm thinking of
Yeah.
them.
I mean, again, it's just not an ideal situation.
No.
Yet, with what we just said, Pirtle out of the lineup, look what has been exposed the last few games. All right, Kevin Cheveldayoff's coming up, the GM of the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets are in town tomorrow, and then the Leafs are in Winnipeg on Saturday night. Get his take on what's been just an incredible year. Like, Winnipeg has been a rock star team since really opening night, and it's going to be a tough challenge for the Leafs tomorrow. Tough one on Saturday. Kevin Cheveldayoff coming up. Jonas Siegel of The Athletic in here with the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Mike Johnson in about a half an hour. I cannot confirm or deny that we'll get to confirm or deny as well. That's coming up. And we got a big one, the next few nights before the Leafs hit their break, and then they got the All-Star game, right? The All-Star game is here in Toronto in a week and a half.
Is that normal to have the break right leading up to the All-Star break where you get that nice chunk?
Yeah, I think the last few years they've done that bye-week stuff either right before or right after. So there's some teams that are still playing next week, and then there'll be, you either play before or you play after. And the Leafs are right before, and then they get right at it at home against the Islanders, I think, on the Monday night. Patrick Waugh will be in town. That'll be something, man. Patrick Waugh, like we should be requesting it. We should try to get him on. Like I'd love to talk to Patrick Waugh and see what his story is, because all eyes are on him, and see if he can get the Islanders back into a playoff spot. But as for the Winnipeg Jets, I mean, it's been going about as well as you could possibly expect it to go. And, they had a pretty crazy offseason, but then they came in here and everything's been working for the Jets. They lost last night in Boston. We caught up with the GM of the Winnipeg Jets earlier this afternoon. Here's Kevin Cheveldayoff, and we began by asking him about this great ride so far and how much of a fun ride it's been to be the GM of the Winnipeg Jets this year.
Well, again, obviously it's, in this league here, you wake up every morning and it's, there's always something different. So you're just kind of up for the new challenge each and every day, but certainly been, proud of the guys, the way they've shown some resiliency over the first half of the season here. And again, just it is a long season. It is a marathon, and you just got to keep on grinding away.
How important, Chevy, was the beginning of this season? You had the Dubois situation you had to handle. And usually when, you give up that star player going the other way, you got great players back, but it seems like a loss and everyone's kind of down. You had to handle the contracts of Scheifele and Hellebuyck. How difficult and how exciting was it to see the product come to life in front of your eyes with the difficulties at the beginning of the season?
Well, every summer has its own challenges, certainly, as a general manager, and there's lots of different things that come into play. And obviously, we at the end of last year, there's lots of emotions. When you don't get an opportunity to play for the Stanley Cup and you lose out of the playoffs, the emotions run really high. And I took that as a real positive in a lot of different ways, because, I know the core of this group, really cares about the team and about each other. But we knew we had some, really difficult decisions that were going to be in front of us. And my kind of year-end press conference there last year, I'm sure I frustrated a lot of people because, I just felt like we needed to take a step back and breathe a little bit and kind of take each and every situation and just meet it head on. And, fortunately for us, we were able to find a good trading partner that allowed us to get some real quality hockey players, but real quality individuals as well. And they just seem to, fit right in. And I think a lot of that dovetailed one thing into another. And we were able to obviously get, two cornerstones of our franchise locked up for the long term, right at training camp.
Well, and you look at the way you're set up. Obviously, Scheifele's here long term, Hellebuyck's here long term. Kyle Connor's got a few years left on his deal. Morrissey's locked in at $6.25 million for the next 4 or 5 years. You got all your draft picks. Your team's great.
It's a nice sounding thing, isn't it, Hayes?
I mean, I'm pumping your tires here, Kevin, but it must be incredibly gratifying to see the team play the way they're playing, and then realize your cap situation, your draft picks. I'm not as familiar with your farm system, but it feels like you guys are in a pretty good place moving forward.
Well, we made a conscious decision, obviously, that we were going to, try to continue to push this group forward. It took us a long time to, get, into this situation. And we've been very fortunate over the course of time, to have Adam Lowry as our captain now. He was the second player that we drafted in our first draft. And, and our, now our leadership core of Mark Scheifele, who was our first, pick that first year that we took over the team. And as you mentioned, a guy like Josh Morrissey, who, we drafted over the course of time, Connor Hellebuyck, Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, all those players, we were drafted and developed and came through the organization. But all of them committed to, some form of a long-term contract with us over that period of time. So, we felt it was important, to try to, keep on pushing with this group. And we were just thankful that, they were of that same mindset. Like I said at the beginning there, where we were able to get them, Scheif and Helly done at the same time there. And, but there was two things that were really apparent, during that period of time when we were negotiating, is that these two guys really want to win. And these two guys really want to win with this group of guys. So, again, that was music to my ears, and thankful that they believed in us.
Kevin, you mentioned Hellebuyck. What is it like as a manager to never have to worry about your goaltending? You look around the league and every team is we got to find a goalie. And you just for years and years and years just have Hellebuyck. What's that like?
Well, it's a real testament to the individual, actually. He's earned it all. And going right back into the draft days when we did draft him, there was lots of goalies in that draft year that were much more heralded than him. And I remember our goalie coach came back into one of our meetings and said, I like this guy and I like that guy, but I really like this guy. And so you put that in the memory bank. And fortunately for us, we were able to, draft him in a good position, that we did. But the reality is he took over from there. He's a player that is very cerebral. He's a player that studies the game, understands the game, and really worked hard at his craft. And so when it came down to us, committing the long-term contract that was in front of us, or the opportunity there, knowing, where he came from and how he worked himself, to be the goalie that he is and the person that he is today, that was an exciting thing, for us and the organization. So, at the beginning of the summer, certainly could I tell you that this is how it's all going to play out? No. But I think over the course of time and the patience and the trade that we made, I think that signaled to the guys that we want to try and win, and why not here?
Leafs Jets tomorrow night. We're chatting with the GM of the Winnipeg Jets, Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Chevy, at the trade deadline, you guys are in a fantastic position right now. Jonas just mentioned your goaltending, how strong your team is. How is this year going to be any different at the deadline? I don't think you've ever been known as all in, get this guy, get that guy. But when your team's having so much success, does it kind of change your view at the deadline and what you need to do or help the team moving forward?
I think it really governed, at the trade deadline, or any deadline for that matter, is by looking at things that fit. And if there's something that fits, then you go out and do it. If there's nothing that you don't feel is right and doesn't fit, then you don't try and force anything. One thing in this game, that is very elusive is chemistry. And when you have a group of guys that play so hard for each other, those are the things that you have to be careful of. But in the same token, if there is a fit, we've always gone out and kind of done it. But it's interesting because you can sit here right now in, middle of January and really don't know what truly is going to be available. I remember in 17-18 when we were able to trade for Stastny, nobody knew Stastny was going to be available up until literally a couple of days before, St. Louis decided, okay, we're going to make him available. So it's just a matter of, kind of sitting back, doing your homework, and like I say, every day is a different challenge. Every morning we wake up, there's something in front of us. Obviously Scheifele's out right now, and Velarde didn't play last game. Those are situations that you have to deal with, and they create opportunities for other people as well.
This time last year, you guys were in a very good spot as well. Then I'd say the last 15 to 20 games, you stumbled, you got into the playoffs, and it really hit a wall for you against Vegas to the point where Rick Bowness, I've never heard a coach analyze his team the way Rick did after that series against Vegas. It was incredibly blunt. He was obviously very disappointed with the way things played out. There has been some turnover here, but a lot of the same players. And I'm curious if you would expect Rick Bowness, does he make sure the team's cognizant of that? Is it a clean slate every single year? Considering where you guys are now, where you were this time last year.
He might have had to have a coffee, Hazy, with a few of the fellas in training camp.
Yeah, exactly. How do you? Yeah, go ahead.
The interesting thing is, that those comments get painted with a broad stroke. But at that point in time, Mark Scheifele was probably done until the third round, as was Josh Morrissey. So there was lots of emotions that were running. Neither of those guys played in the latter part of the series. Nikolai Ehlers, we lost Nikolai. Basically all but for one game in the playoffs. He never played. So there was lots of emotion, of a group of guys that, obviously, spent a lot of, emotional currency throughout the year because, again, it's an emotional league. It's you put your heart and soul into it. And when you don't get that opportunity in the end, it is tough. And it's the same for a coach. Rick Bowness has been behind the bench more than any other, coach, in various different forms of his job. But he's only doing it for one reason. It's not for the money. It's to win a Stanley Cup. So when that opportunity ends, the emotions are what take you. If there's one thing that Rick Bowness is, he's authentic. And, he has certain things that he's never changed, but he's really evolved in the game. And that's why he's been around for as long as he has. And, again, I would rather have those guys be emotional, whether it's the coach or whether it's the players, than just take things passively and say, well, wait till next year.
Yeah, and Rick was, I think he was really honest, obviously, last night. You guys lost 4-1 in Boston last night, the first time in 34 games, or I guess 35. You gave up more than 3 goals in a game. And, your head coach was talking about breakouts and passes and how he thought it was more self-inflicted as opposed to maybe what Boston was doing. But that 34 straight games of 3 goals or less, that's just an incredible streak. And obviously, Hellebuyck, I'm sure, would play a big role in that, both goaltenders. But was there anything in particular as you're watching it, you're like, this is something we're doing so well, and clearly we need to continue? Was there one ingredient in particular that made your defensive play, so strong, and it's been so strong all year?
Well, I think it just comes down to, for us to be successful, we have to play a certain way. We can't. We're not a run and gun team like maybe we used to be in the past, and maybe that was our downfall in the past. I'm not sure, but you have to play a certain way, and when we do, more times than not, we've been successful. But there's been some games where you haven't been successful but played the right way, and you just know it. And but there's the flip side as well, and this is an honest game. And, if you don't do the little things on a nightly basis, it's difficult to win consistently.
Well, it's going to be fun the next few nights. Again, you guys are in town only once. Tomorrow night, Winnipeg, Toronto, and then the Leafs and Jets will be flying out, and it'll be a home game on Saturday night. Always an electric night when the Leafs are in town on a Saturday night especially. That should be a lot of fun. So congrats on what's been a great run so far. Best of luck tomorrow night and the rest of the way, and we always appreciate you doing this. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks a lot for having me on, guys.
There he is, Kevin Cheveldayoff, who I'm sure he's happy with his team like he just expressed. And I know, GMs in every pro sport, they're always diplomatic. They're generally classy when talking about trades. But in the back of his mind, he's got to love seeing Pierre-Luc Dubois just chop it up in L.A. He has been such a disappointment. And Todd McClellan spoke on him today and said, basically, it doesn't matter if he's playing 24 minutes or 4 minutes. He has to be a difference maker. And with or without the puck, we've gone through this long enough. It's time. Basically, it's enough. You are killing us here. You were brought in here to supply serious production.
Is it an 8-year contract?
8-year deal they gave him. Sign and trade. I think it was a sign and trade with the Jets. And
the coach says it's time. that means he's at the end of the rope with you. Like you make him sick watching you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's to have a player of that caliber. I think it was Pierre-Luc Dubois who had, like, in Columbus when he was wanting out, he had, like, the shift, it was called. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he did. I remember it vividly.
Like, he was just out there, and I don't know if it's that bad right now, but I don't know, man. You want it out of Columbus, you want it out of Winnipeg, and then you go to L.A., and you got a great team, and you're just out there doing nothing. Like, don't you just want to work your ass off and be a difference maker just for the fact that they stuck their neck out and went and got you? Well, maybe he just doesn't care.
Well, that's
maybe
why
he'll get pissed off there and be like, I don't want to be here either. I wouldn't put it past him.
Right, but who's taking him the next time? What, 8
no
years
kidding.
at $8.5
Now it ain't
million?
happening anymore. It ain't happening anymore.
What's the deal though? Like, remember that series with the Leafs where he had
a monster?
Like, you were like, oh my god, this guy's like everything you want in the playoffs, and it's like
he's a really good player. Like, obviously,
so
it's been really
a team or like.
I think it's possible, but you use the Jonathan Huberdeau explanation where, okay, I'll grant you last year, but what's the explanation for Huberdeau this year continuing to play the way he's playing?
There is none.
Yeah. Well, he's 31.
31, or he got his 8 years. I don't know. I mean, that's the biggest concern in the hard salary cap era. Listen, we're going to deal with it here with Nylander. Like, Willie, you've committed to him 8 years at 11.5.
Yeah.
He better be great. Not good. Not, I can deal with that. Like, great.
Well, and look
for
what
the next at least 5 or 6 years.
Look what Tampa's doing. Tampa's saying to Steven Stamkos, 2 cups, captain, we're going to wait until the offseason. Like,
right.
We're not going to give you that contract or a crazy contract.
Mm-hmm.
Was he 33? Something like that?
Yeah, he's around Tavares' age.
You know what I mean?
Because they're testing the idea. This guy's won 2 Stanley Cups, been to 3 finals. They're testing the idea of how much he does love it there.
Right.
Because to say that I love it there and my kids are there or whatever, then they're going to be like, okay, well, if we want to do something and do some kind of retool on the fly here, if you're going to show us that you love it, that means it's $3 million or whatever. It's not the idea of 7 or 8 or whatever. It's not. It's probably not in the cards on Tampa's end. Could he go get that somewhere else? Of course he could, because he still scores and he's still an effective player. But that's what they're going to test. How much do you actually love it here?
Do you think actually other teams will start to do this more? Because like we've seen in the past, like I think of like Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf in Anaheim. They go those long contracts. They don't work out in the end. You think in LA with some of the contracts they signed, they actually did kind of work out. San Jose, like, do you think teams with core players will just be we'll just say
have the stones,
but no one does. Like, this is like the real.
No, I know they're like,
example.
oh, that guy's been such a good player.
Yes.
John Tavares is going to come up really soon. I've already seen people with the tweets and the ideas and the conversations where they're like, well, if you look at him moving forward, it'll be like a 4 or 5 year deal at $7 million. And I say, excuse me, what are you talking about? It's like they just gave him $80 million or close to it. It's like.
Yeah,
there's no 4-year package coming up for anybody, anything like that for John Tavares.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would be, but anything is possible. I mean,
well, I know, but Hayes, the response is always the captain, though. And, and I'm like, well, so what do you think Tampa's doing? Oh, so he's the captain, so they're just giving Stamkos a 4-year deal at 7? No, they're not.
No, they're not.
This is business, man. It's big business. If you want to lock in a guy, and it's difficult, it's going to be difficult because he's the captain making $11 million now, and then to bring him back and say, you're going to be a 3rd or 4th line player, you're not going to be an impact player, which he will be doing on his own at that time. It's difficult to bring that guy back into the locker room. Very difficult.
Yeah, it's a serious transition. Yeah, yes. You're right. I mean, for him, right, he's got to be comfortable. Stamkos has to be comfortable. And listen, like Pierre-Luc Dubois is a really good player. Jonathan Huberdeau is a really good player. Like, it's shocking what's happened to Huberdeau. And if you're Calgary, you have to hope that at some point he snaps out of it and starts contributing more.
Wasn't that this year?
Well, it was supposed to be this year. But after this, they have 7 more at $10.5 million.
Well, look what's happening in San Jose. Mark Vlasic doesn't play.
Yeah.
I think he has like 3 more years after this.
Right. And he was a big part of their program, and they gave him a long-term deal.
What do you mean he doesn't play? He just
literally doesn't play. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're such a mess.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, it's different when Calgary's trying to compete and LA thinks they can win a Stanley Cup. And a big part of that before the season was they thought Pierre-Luc Dubois could help them do that. And he has not pulled his weight. So Winnipeg, obviously, you're pretty happy the way things have shaken out here. Mike Johnson in 15 minutes. Confirm or deny. Still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Mike Johnson coming up in about 10 minutes. Confirm or deny right around the corner as well. Leafs back in action tomorrow night. The Raptors lost to Memphis last night. Snowing. Weather's not great. But TSN 1050 wants you to be our unofficial correspondent at the grittiest sports party of the year. Call us right now, 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. The first caller through with the correct keyword announced this morning on First Up wins a $100 Golftown gift card and qualifies for the grand prize draw, which is a trip for two to Scottsdale, Arizona, 4-night hotel stay, 2 tickets to the closing weekend of the Waste Management Open, an additional $1,000 Golftown gift card, a custom full bag fitting at Golftown Studio X, and $500 cash to spend on the trip.
Why can't they send us there? That's what I can't figure out.
Can you guys tell me about this
man.
golf tournament that's coming up there? Apparently, it's such a big deal in
Where?
Scottsdale.
The Waste Management?
Is that what it is?
Massive.
Yeah, it's a big tournament. Are you new here? Or what are you talking about?
I was there not long ago, and the guy was telling me like that there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people at this golf course, and I was like, oh, really?
That's the Waste Management, TPC Scottsdale.
I actually know that tournament.
You're familiar with that tournament?
Just from the commercials on TSN.
Okay.
Overdrive on the 16th hole. Think about that.
I love that idea.
Overdrive on the 16th hole.
Contest details available at tsn1050.ca. So you're not, I know you're not a big golf guy, I understand that, but
I
the
just
Waste
know
Management,
that's the fun one, right?
generally speaking, that's where guys are taking their shirts off on 16 and throwing beers and
I'd go to that one.
it's a great tournament.
Yeah.
It's a great tournament. All right. Well, yeah, Nick Taylor almost won it last year.
Oh.
Remember, Nick Taylor was in the mix, final group. Scheffler ended up just kind of getting past him. But, yeah, it's a great tournament. All right. Hour 2 coming up. Mike Johnson will join us. Confirm and deny still to come. Jonas Siegel in here of The Athletic. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.